All right. Looks like we're live. We've got Clive and Rafi coming on. They should be here in about 10 minutes or so. If you're watching this recorded, just know that I start early my live streams just to say hello to everyone. So let's see who's here. We've got Belly Dance Arabia. We've got Darren Smith. Andrew Brown, Hannah is here, Pablo Pina, Ian Carline from New Zealand. Hope you can hear me okay. Dutch Libertarians here, Michael Kennedy, Silver Drill Pickle, Richard Tugas, bonjour, Mario de Montreal in Canada, Andrew Bevan from South Wales, Gillian B is here, Cozy Fantuzzi, Andrew Watson says, hi, Mario and Rudy. Yeah, Rudy's fast asleep. He's pretty comfortable. Cisco Guru 69. Hi, Cisco Guru. RIP UK. From the UK but residing in Vietnam. All right. Michael Kennedy. Nick Smith from South Carolina. Oh, Scoobyism, recovering from my hospital stay and heart attack. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're recovering well. My eye? Well, my eye is really good. My right eye, it's fine. Yeah, I had the operation almost a year ago. Loud and clear. Andy Lee from Italy. Olivier Leroy. He mentioned something about the estate agents, property estate agents in Brittany going under in France, I guess. Echo 005 from Holland, no, from Grimsby, sorry. Paul Sargent. Indy from Northwest Ohio. Great that it's loud and clear. Cape Horn, second class citizen, Cape Horn. So you're down in Chile or Argentina? Darrow Roughly from Australia. Good. It must be fairly pretty early down there. Frank Peter, I think he's in Australia as well. Says good day. Good eye, mate. HZ is I guess you're talking about the stock market. Is it set to roar higher up to the presidential selection and tank post-election? I don't know. It could tank before. It's happened back in 2000. It tanked before the election. It tanked in 2008 and in 2020. So it doesn't necessarily that they mean they keep that the market will stay up just before the election. Mario, do you like batucada? Yeah, I mean that's a Brazilian like drumming. Yeah, it's fine. I'm not I don't play any instruments. I'm not really musical, I would say, to be honest. Yeah, but there you go. I think my wife, she dances the samba better than I do, and she's English. So it just goes to show you how I'm not really a good dancer, nor really that good in music. It's not my forte. Bob Hunter, thank you for your super chat. think Rudy's dreaming. I don't know if you can hear it. You stopped now. He says, "Here's £5 toward your new hair transplant." This is from two-tier Kier benevolent fund. No, I don't need a hair transplant. I mean, I'm not interested in that, but thank you anyway for your super chat. Uh, Question for Mary. If I have a bunch of AppMax 1 ounce silver bars, not coins of the realm, will those still sell okay when the time comes? Yeah, I think so. Definitely. They should be fine. Um, yeah, I mean, uh, there is capital gains tax on bars, but you'd have to be for silver. Let I think silver will go up quite a bit, but I don't think it will be a problem to sell silver bars. I've got my Billy mug here. Billy says, snore on and keep stacking. I don't know if you remember this mug. I think it's still in my Teespring store. Uh, so the topic today, or the title for the live stream, I always pick a title just to have one, but we'll cover it as well. Surviving a Great Depression and Major War. Has Powell kept rates too high for too long? And I noticed recently that former President Trump and the candidate for the Republican Party, he warned of 1929 style depression and World War. And I'm not taking sides here. I'm just listening to what he said, and I think it's pretty interesting. He talks about all the instability, uh, not just in the US, but in other powerful countries, people on the streets and stuff. I think he was talking about the UK. Things are very dangerous right now. Maybe he's been watching some of my videos about hyperinflation or collapse and the symptoms of it. Bob Hunter, thank you again. Uh, he was only joking. I have to have a laugh. Yeah, I figured you were. Anyway, Bob, don't worry. Well, you didn't have to give me another super chat. Edgar Torres is from Florida. By the water. Yeah, pretty much everywhere in Florida is by the water. Even in Orlando, you're next to the lakes. Um, Here in the UK, in Britain, anywhere in Britain, you are not 70 miles further. You're always at least 70. Yeah, you're not more than 70 miles away from the sea in Britain, which is a quite an interesting fact. No. Nice to see No. I hadn't seen No for a long time. Added some silverweight last week. I added some uh, AU gold last week. Um, yeah, I think it was in the beginning of the week when we got hit hard a little bit. Uh, B Hodl XRP. Did you get any feedback from Glint? Well, I told you what they told me, and it looks like now the warning strike from Companies House has been lifted, so it's fine. But I personally don't like the fact that that happened. So it's up to the viewers and people who have accounts with them to decide whether they want to take I don't think there's any risk right now because that's been lifted, but I think it's bad form for a company as big as Glint to not do its accounts properly and on time, and I don't like that. That's the way I feel about it. So we got someone coming on here. Oh, it's Rafi. Rafi's on, yeah, on time. Still waiting for Clive. Hi, Rafi.
Hello, Mario. How you doing?
Good, and you? Nice to see you.
Things are all right.
Yeah, good. We're waiting for Clive. He should be on soon. The title, the live stream today, Rafi, is Surviving a Great Depression and Major War, and has Powell kept rates too high for too long? We do talk a lot about hyperinflation and currency collapse, but I would say deflationary collapse is just as bad and could be just as good for gold. What do you think?
It's going to be the same thing. They're both sides of the same coin.
Yeah,
Uh, sorry, they're different sides of the same coin. There is a difference though. In deflationary depression, you do pretty well with fiat cash as well. Whereas in a hyperinflationary depression, you would only do good with real money and not fiat cash. So that's the difference really. But with gold and silver, it would be the same thing practically.
yeah, I think you'd do well in both, wouldn't you? And hi, Clive.
Good evening, Mario. Good evening, Rafi.
Good evening.
I see your sunflower is pretty it's moving around quite a bit.
It's in the air conditioner, so it's blowing around. It's not agreeing or disagreeing with me if you see it shaking its head.
I thought it was alive, Clive.
It's, it's the wind from the air conditioner. I hope you can't. I hope the noise from the air conditioner doesn't disturb you. If it does, I'll turn it off.
No, I've got like a fan on as well. I don't think you guys can hear it. It's
No,
weird.
no, we can't.
Clive, I was talking to Rafi because I think it was Donald Trump recently. I think last Thursday he said that things are getting topsy-turvy. I think he didn't mention the UK, but he said, I'm going to play this clip if you guys don't mind. Let's have a look here. It's not very long.
Is it Trump saying something?
Yeah, and I'm not I'm not saying that hold on. I'm not saying that I'm favoring Trump. I just want to mention okay, let me see if I because I let me see if I can share it. Okay, here we go. Uh I'll play this. Yeah, what I was trying to say is I'm not saying I'm backing anyone because I'm not even American and I'm neutral, but I thought this was interesting. Listen to this.
I think that our country is right now in the most dangerous position it's ever been in from an economic standpoint, from a safety standpoint. Uh, Both gangs on the street and, frankly, gangs outside of our country in the form of other countries that are, frankly, very powerful. They're very powerful countries, and we don't know what we're doing. We have leadership that has no clue how to handle them or how to handle any other situation. We have a we have a lot of bad things coming up. You could end up in a depression of the 1929 variety, which would be a devastating thing, took many years, took decades to recover from it. And we're very close to that. And we're very close to a world war. In my opinion, we're very close to a world war. We have people that don't know how to handle it. They're not respected. All over the world, they're laughed at. And we can't have that. Most dangerous period of time I've ever seen for our country.
All right, I'll stop it there.
Way of learning to
And
drive is completely
hold on, let me
with our fast track driving
all right. Clive, I'll let you chime in on what you think about what Trump said.
Well, I think he's right. We are living in dangerous times. I have to say, this isn't exactly new that we live in dangerous times. There have been times in my adult career when things look pretty scary. I think perhaps the most scary of them all, and many people won't even remember this ever existed, but it was in the year, I think it was the year when was it? Was it 1990 or the year 2000? I've forgotten now. But when America invaded Afghanistan to fight the Russians in Afghanistan, and the Financial Times and the Sunday Times carried a headline: "The world is on a tightrope, and we're about to break out into nuclear war." and before that, before my time, of course, we had the Cuban crisis in the 1950s, where again it looked like there was going to be nuclear war breaking out between Russia and the Soviet Union. And I think we are at a very worrying time right now. And if things do deteriorate, we could well end up in a recession, depression. I think they're giving a recession at the moment. They're giving it I think they're giving it a 45% chance, up from 25%. And this was one of the US banks a few months ago. So the chances of a recession are increasing. But of course, the closer you get to recession, the closer you get to a depression. And a depression is something which lasts much longer than a recession. It goes much, much deeper. And you have a much higher level of unemployment and dissatisfaction generally. So, yeah, I think it's worrying. What do you think, Rafi?
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the war vibe over here, especially since we're directly threatened by it. I was going to ask you about London. I mean, I'm seeing all kinds of scary news about what's going on in the UK, and it doesn't look very encouraging. I was going to ask you if you're feeling anything on the street. Are you feeling society breakdown? Is it just media hype? I don't really know what I'm looking at anymore. And it's all just so confusing, and I don't know what's part of the cartoon and what is even basically reflective of reality. It's just everything's a show.
Yeah.
It,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Clive.
were you asking myself, or were you
I
asking
know, I
Mario
was
about
asking
London?
both of you, like what
Yeah.
I'm seeing all these clips of riots in the UK, and I can't tell if things are actually flying apart or this is just more hype.
Yeah, do you want me? I'll answer that first. Um, I mean, these riots have been, yeah, they've kind of stopped for now, but I don't think the unhappiness of the general public is over, even though they're been portrayed as being far right. And what you will notice as well, Rafi, these riots and protests a lot of them are in the north of England. They're not really in London. And why is that? Well, because a lot of the problems, social problems that have happened there, they've also haven't got like the economy is not done well for them. The If you strip out London, the average wage in the UK is less than Mississippi's average wage, which is the poorest country in the UK, in the US, excuse me. So where I live, I mean, I live just greater London. It's a bit of a, we're living a bit of a bubble compared to what, people live maybe up in Leeds or Manchester and the Midlands, Birmingham. So, but the government here, the new prime minister, he's stoking a lot of anger behind it, and I think these people are just average working class British people, and it's not just white people; it's people of all colors and creeds. Maybe not the one from the Middle East, the Mohammedan creed, but uh, and they've been quite tough on punishing the rioters, and they've done it really quickly. They took them to court, and they're going to put them in prison, and they've been really tough. And I saw Peter Hitchens, who's like a commentator in the UK. He said, "This is how you solve the problem of violence and disorder. You do it. You can focus and do it, but you're only doing it on these people." And it's interesting that a friend of mine sent me this article here. I'll quickly share it. It's from the Wall Street Journal, and it's written by someone from England, Dominic Green. I think he's a fellow at the Royal Historical Society, and he said, "What's behind the violent UK riots?" So I think he's got it right, and I'll go to his conclusion. This is what he says. Mass immigration and multiculturalism have failed. The police have lost the public, the government has lost the plot, and the English have had enough. So that's what's going on. Maybe Clive wants to add something to that.
Well, I'm here, sitting here in Switzerland and looking at it from afar and with great interest because England is my original home country, albeit many, many decades ago. When you see these riots, it does make you think, do I really want to go to England for a holiday or anything else? It looks very dangerous. But whilst these riots, there've been a lot of them in the last week, they are very, very localized. And I think that your chances of getting caught up in one, if you don't want to, are very, very slim. I mean, it's well flagged in advance. You sort of see people announcing where it's going to be, the police telling people to stay away, and that sort of thing. Of course, that only encourages some people to go to those very places, partly because they're curious and they want to film it, and partly because they want to take part and express their opinion. And I've also seen in quite a few situations, Birmingham was an example, where there were the two sides. You know, there were the anti-immigration group, mob, if you want to call it that. They were the bit I saw was quite peaceful, and on the other side you had the pro-immigration. You know, people who are saying, "I'm an immigrant to the UK. I've been here all my life, or my parents came, and I think it's great for Britain that you've got these people coming into England. They should be given jobs, and they're thinking about what they're running away from." Of course, you've got a few bad uns coming in, so you had the two sides giving their points of view, but the police were keeping the two groups well apart in the situation I saw in Birmingham. I also saw on TV an interview they conducted with a lady who is the landlord of a pub, an English pub. Her pub had been attacked by the mob the previous night. A group, they were having a karaoke night inside the pub for families with kids and so forth. And towards the middle of the evening, a group of masked men attacked the pub, and they were bashing on it with machetes, and some said guns as well, although I didn't see that. And she said it was really, really frightening inside. And the interviewer said, "Well, are you frightened?" And she said, "Well, it was at the time, but no, I don't think so." And they said, "Do you think they're going to come back and do it again?" And she said, "No, they go to one place and then they move on and go to another place." And she was very, very stoic and very laid back, and not at all afraid of a repetition. And the interviewer said, "Well, what about your customers? Are they going to be afraid to come to the pub?" And she said, "No, everyone knows the pub. They're all locals. They'll keep coming." This particular lady didn't make it sound very bad at all, although, of course, the experience they had with people banging with machetes on the doors and breaking the windows the previous evening had been very scary for them, and especially for the children inside the pub. But nobody, well, one man got lynched. I think he was all right in the end, but she said he was all right. But you could see the mob. He went outside for a cigarette, and the mob pounced on him and started kicking him and so forth. But she said he was all right in the end. So obviously very scary. But if you stay away from it, if you can, I think you've got no danger going to the UK at all.
Well, I heard about and saw some of the clips of that mob, and they were I'm not sure if I should say, but they were Muslims, and that's the other problem, Rafi, that people, and even the Wall Street Journal article said that there's something called two-tier policing here in the UK, where the police react a lot more aggressively against the native, so to speak, British, non-Muslim, and they didn't do anything in this pub. There's no police there I mean, but I don't think at the moment it's still okay. I wouldn't say people should not come to the UK because it's pretty much normal as is. Of course, the media is going to focus on the riots, but I'm not sure that things are going to really improve until the government kind of how can I say, they admit to what the guy on the Wall Street Journal said, and right now they're not. And I think we have a lot of economic problems as well. We have a lot of debt. We're taxing people the most for 70 years. And yeah, it's difficult. So we got a super chat here from Bob Hunter. Thank you. He says, it's funny how evil prevails in spite of kindness and international rules, but when justice is usurped by corpora- corporatocracy, we need to fight back and stand tall in love and kindness and truth. Let's stay strong. I agree about the truth and everything, but I think there are a few things that are being really manipulated, not just on social media. I have to admit, there are people on social media that sometimes manipulate things, but also on the mainstream side, I think that's even worse. I wanted to show you guys what I saw this article here, and I even tweeted about it. Let me see if I can find it. It was, oh, here we go. I'm going to share it. Uh, and it just goes to show how the FT, for example, in this case, is really kind of manipulated thing. It looks like there's a push to make Kamala Harris look really good. And here's the headline, Kamala Harris is more trusted than Donald Trump on the US economy. And this is the headline, but I read the whole article, but there are a lot of people who just see the headline and they say, oh, okay, she's doing really well. But I read the whole thing, and this is what it says here. 42% said they would be much or somewhat better off if Trump won another 4 years in the White House. Just 33% said they would be much or somewhat better off under a Harris presidency. And I said this article makes no sense whatsoever because you see this headline here, but it says that most people think they would be much or somewhat better off with Trump. So I'll let Rafi chime on that.
They're trying to make Harris look good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really amazing if you understand even just a basic sense of how much people hated Kamala Harris before Biden dropped out and how pathetic she was, and she still is. And she's hated on both sides because she's just intolerable. Like you hear like two words out of her mouth, it makes you cringe. And it's embarrassing for the United States to even consider a leader like that. I'm not even saying that considering Donald Trump again is much better. I mean, at least he can put a sentence together, but he can't do much more than that. And I mean, he was what was he? He was talking about, oh, it's a very dangerous time and nobody knows how to handle it. Yeah, least of all him. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
there's no choice here. I mean, the choice is so pathetic that you just want to cry and like curl into a ball and you just like tell the world to leave you alone, but it just won't because it keeps getting dumber and more dangerous. That's just my feeling. It's all it's all negative. I mean, no, it's positive in the end because like I feel we're at the well, South Korea, we're at the verge of some kind of implosion or explosion or some kind of implosion, and we're just waiting for it to happen.
Yeah, I think this is like a symptom. What I'm trying to show here is not that I'm against Harris or pro Trump, even though I agree with you about Harris. It's just that you can't really trust not just people maybe tweeting stuff or on TikTok or whatever, or even on YouTube, but also especially the mainstream media. And it looks like yeah, there's two different worlds out there, and I think that's really bad. And I think it yeah, like I think Trump was right about we're being in dangerous times, and that could be reflected in faith and confidence in the currency and the markets. Clive, what do you say?
Well, you know, the political divide in America is getting wider. The political divide in the UK is getting wider. I think that's happening all over Europe. And you know, whether it's divide between the political parties or between the pro or anti-immigrationists, or whether it's a divide between the rich and the poor, I think the divides are getting bigger, and that does increase the risk that we're going to have some or increasing levels of unrest, civil unrest of some sort. As far as the American politicians are concerned, frankly, I wouldn't vote for any of them. At least the ones I've seen, I don't think I think they're all in their own way bad for the economy. Bad, they're quite dangerous, and none of them are actually going to be effective in doing anything about the deficits and the inflation, which is going to carry on ad infinitum, as far as I can see.
There's a super chat here from Carlos. Thank you, Carlos. He says, Ides of August is almost upon us. I guess that's the middle of the month. Similar to August 2022 when UK had gilt crisis and 3 prime ministers within a few months. Huge UK USA deficits occurring now, not fixed. What next? Yeah, I remember, Carlos, that well. I warned as well back in July, August, because it actually kicked off in September, the crisis in the UK, and it's usually in the fall or autumn equinox. So I agree with you. Got another super chat here, Frank Pizzo. Thank you. Be careful what you post, Mario. I don't want you to get locked up. Yeah, I don't know if you heard that, Rafi, that apparently you can they can knock on your door if you say something that they consider hateful or dangerous and inciting violence. But I don't think we're doing that. We're just observing things, but you never know. I think Nigel Farage today, he was on Fox News with Maria Bartiromo, and he said that Keir Starmer is putting the freedom of speech in the UK in danger. I think he is. Bob Hunter, thank you again for your super chat. He says, well said, Rafi, have a pint on me, brother. £2. Would that buy a pint in Israel?
A pint of beer.
Yeah.
It depends what beer. Yeah, it might. Yeah.
I think here you could get half a pint with £2. But anyway, maybe in Scotland is a bit cheaper. I wanted to show you guys a chart and the viewers, and I don't want to scare people, but it's just a scenario that I thought was interesting. If we have a deflationary depression, like 1929, like Trump said. So I did this chart here going back to the 1920s. It goes further back, but it's a bit, I couldn't go forward here after 2024 without cutting out the rest. But here's the top in 1929, and I think it was just below 400, like 386 on the Dow. And then we bottomed in June of 1932. So it took almost just about under 3 years for that to happen. And it bottomed at just above 40. So it was an 89.49% drop. And then it was only in 1954 that more than, yeah, let's say 25 years after the top in 1954, that the Dow surpassed that level. So I did a little extrapolation here. If that were to happen today, the Dow would drop to 4,348, and we'd only break the high this year in 2049 over here. And just want to see what you guys think. And in terms of gold for the viewers, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. Would be a really bad deflationary collapse. And it happened in Japan. I think the Nikkei lost, like, loads of banks collapsed in Japan. I think gold might be at around 8,000 if that were to happen. It doesn't sound very high, but the Dow gold ratio would be half. What do you guys think? I'll start with Clive.
Well, Mary, I really hope this doesn't happen, because my recommended allocation to equities is 65%. So I would be sorely hurt if it went down to 4,000 odd from whatever it is now. But there's one thing I should say about market declines. Some stocks decline further than others. and maybe I'll just mention the kind of stocks that I'm buying, as opposed to I don't buy the index. I don't buy the whole market because I think it's full of good stocks and bad stocks. But in a depression, there will be the first things that people are going to stop spending money on are the things you don't need. So if you're investing in the stock market and you want to survive a major decline in the stock markets, think about investing only in the companies which make something which we need now and we will need in the future. And if you find a company or you find your own companies, you're thinking, well, the world could do without that. All they produce is some media or something that we don't really need. Well, those are the sorts of things which probably will be the first where people cut their spending. And, so if you're talking about a media company, the advertising will disappear very, very quickly. And the price of the media company will drop much further than, say, a company which makes food, which is something we all need. And we can think of millions of things that we need, ranging from food to metal pipes to wiring, maybe there's some things we need less of. We don't need so much of in the way of holidays or entertainment, but there are essentials. So I'd focus on those sort of companies which make something which will always be needed no matter what the world is doing. And if you have that, of course, you're going to go down. If we have a major depression, recession, you're going to go down too. But you probably won't go down as much as the majority. So in that respect, that's the kind of area I'd be investing my equities in, and that's where I am focusing. As far as gold is concerned, yes, I agree with you, Mario. I think that in the environment where things are starting to go very sour, gold will hold its own. We've seen that over the past few weeks as the price of stocks gyrated wildly. The gold, more or less, it went down a little bit, but within a few days, it was back virtually almost at the all-time high. It's not reacting badly at all to the gyration of the stock market. I think if we do have a major decline, it might go down a bit, but I think it'd be one of the better assets to hold.
Rafi, what do you think about this chart of doom? Even though the drop in 29, if you waited 3 years, you could have bought the lowest, in a while, you would have bought the exact low in the Dow. But the problem is, I think a lot of people, when the Dow started crashing in 29 and kept dropping, people thought in 1930, 31, beginning of 32, that they were buying bargains. And so they started buying it, and then they still lost, they still were left with only a third of what they bought. So it's, and nowadays, when people always say buy the dip, so it could be a huge trap. And I would, yeah. What do you think?
Well, having just finished the Great Depression, A Diary, I forgot what the guy's name is. What, do you remember his name?
Benjamin Roth.
Yeah, well, you have it too.
I'm reading it right now. I mean, it's really interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I had a different cover than you. I guess different edition. It's like, Harry Potter is different in London than it is in the States.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you see him tracking it by almost by the week from 1929 to 1932. And he's talking about he never had any money to invest in the market at all until like the 40s or 50s. But he was talking about how people were buying and just they kept losing, and almost nobody was able to time it. I mean, that's why it went so wild, because nobody was able to time it. If people were able to time it, then the market itself would even out. If everyone was a perfect timer, then none of the indices would move at all. That's the irony of it. So I don't think we're going to have that kind of chart. I don't think we're going to have like a depression style in that way. Just because back then money was tethered to gold pretty strongly, not completely, but much stronger than it is now. I'd be more interested to see that chart of the Dow versus gold and how it gyrated from 1929 to now. Because I do think we're going back to the 1980 low, and that's just going to mean that like if the play back in 1929 was to buy cash or government bonds, the play in 2025 or 2026 or whatever it's going to be is going to be to buy gold instead of cash or bonds, because the bonds are going to hell also.
Yeah, even back in the early 30s, Benjamin Roth, he talks about how government bonds were going down too, because most people think, oh, in the recession or depression, people are going to buy treasuries and yields are going to go low, but it wasn't the case. And I think the U.S. government had a lot less debt than it has now, definitely as a percentage of GDP. The other thing that was interesting in 1932, he talks about that two Japanese prime ministers were assassinated in the last year. And then the week before, the French prime minister was assassinated. There's a lot of political upheaval between fascists and socialists, and it's very similar to today. But I kind of agree with you guys that they won't let the system deflate as much as it did then. They'll come in and do more QE. But recently, I think there was a tweet recently by, and I'll share it with you here. I think it is from David Rogers Webb, the guy who wrote The Great
Great
Taking.
Taking.
Yeah, and he used to work for Soros, and he said the following: a decision has been made to begin disappearing liquidity from the global financial system on an epic scale, and it is being run by the people that control the central banks, dated 5th of August. And then I replied to Ben Rickard. I know this guy. He follows me. I can't say more about him, but he works in the banking sector. And I replied, I said it would be interesting to know where he gets his information from. Does he know people who work at the central banks? And this is what Ben Rickard replied. He worked with George Soros in the past. Someone has probably given him the inside word. It's possible. What do you think, Clive?
Well, it's not my central scenario that we're all going to become incredibly poor in a Great Depression. It is a possibility, and this is why everyone should have things like gold and own their own house, and preferably with no mortgage if you can. But it's not my scenario. But let's look at it like this: the likely scenario is if we start to move into a depression or recession, the Federal Reserve will act anyway, but it'll be forced to act by the government. It will start printing money. It'll be buying government bonds. The government will engage in much more deficit spending. Of course, we will then go into a highly inflationary environment, hence gold being a good investment. But in a highly inflationary environment, to get us out of the depression or recession, people will be willing to buy anything. You only have to look at the stock markets of countries like Turkey or Venezuela, which are going through the roof because the currency is going through the floor because of the very high inflation. So I would be of the camp that I don't think we're going to see a massive decline of the order that you looked at, down to 4,000 on the Dow. I have to accept it's a possibility in certain scenarios, but I don't think it's the most likely scenario. I think the most likely scenario is we get effectively bailed out by the Fed put.
Rafi, what do you think about what David Rogers Webb said? Because what he said there doesn't like correspond to the Fed adding liquidity or cutting rates aggressively. It points to the opposite, and that would be, I guess, when you read this, the diary here, one of the things he notes is that there's just no money around, no currency. People, and because all the values have been completely trashed, all the assets that back the banking balance sheets, and there's no money, and it's just I I don't see it happening, but you never know.
But Mario, I think it was a question not so much of no money, but no credit, because the money at the time was gold. So what was happening? People didn't trust the banks anymore, so people were taking their gold, their money, out of the banks and putting it under their pillows. So because it was like that, the banks couldn't lend any money, and therefore there was no possible way of expanding the money supply, no possible way of greasing the wheels of the economy, which is kind of different from today, where if we all take our money out of the bank and put it under our pillow, the Federal Reserve will just go and print a bunch more, so the banks are full of cash, they can keep lending.
Yeah, but from 1930 to 32, I think what he meant by cash and money was like banknotes, and because the U.S. was still on a gold standard, so most people didn't take the gold. The people who were taking the gold out from the U.S. and it didn't help were the foreign countries like Europe, because they had a huge banking crisis in 1931. But what he meant is that people didn't get paid. People were using their savings books as currency because the banks didn't have any cash. And
Deposit books, yeah, selling at a discount. Their deposit books were selling at a discount. Like if I had a bank account that had, let's say, $10,000 in it, I could sell it for like $7,000 cash or something, whatever it was.
yeah, so Rafi, what do you think about what David Rogers Webb said?
I don't know. I'm not that big of a fan of him. He seems to just take distilled, like overly distilled ideas and sensationalize them. Like, I'm not saying that the grade taking is not valid. I'm just saying that it's cheap, because it's happening all the time. I mean, the grade taking is the inflation. Once the currency is dead, everything's taken. So like it doesn't really matter if you have access to your stocks or not. I mean, at least in my thinking. So
Where
yeah, and the other thing I was going to say is, like, I don't see in the numbers that liquidity is being taken away. I'm not seeing that in any of the indications yet. The total loans and leases that are given to banks and the revolving credit facilities and all the other Fred charts you could look at, they're still heading in the same, incremental direction up, a little bit slower than before, but I don't see any kind of liquidity crash yet. I mean, when it happens, it's going to be sudden, but I don't know what he's talking about.
Carlos, thank you for your super chat. He says, without a Fed with huge debts and deficits, what recovery could occur after a collapse without a Fed? Any opinion on that?
A much cleaner one. If there were no Fed to force a recovery in a certain direction, the Fed basically bails out its buddies and its friends so that the recovery favors the people that it has connections with. So if there were no Fed and everything collapsed, then you'd have a much more evenly spread out, equitable recovery based on the things that people actually need. And people would bail out the companies that they want by buying the stuff that they need. And it would be a reflection of what the economy actually needs to do to create the most prosperity, as opposed to what the Fed wants it to do, which would be to patronize the businesses that have its friends in it, the other paper pushers. So
Yeah.
we don't want the Fed involved in the recovery, and thank God that's what a hyperinflation does. It takes a central bank out because it makes their unit of liability meaningless, and then the economy has to recover naturally on its own terms, and that just kicks the central bank out. Hyperinflation is firing all the central bankers, de facto.
Clive?
Well, the world's incredibly resourceful and people are incredibly resourceful. So left to their own means and without taxation and without government interference, everybody would find their own way of surviving, and the economy would be much more efficient if we didn't have governments intervening and taxing this and controlling that and putting tariffs on this and that. So I think it would be a recovery would be possible even without a Fed. I don't think that's a big deal. But of course, what the Fed will do if we have a major recession, it will print money so the government can give it to those who are unable to be resourceful, those who are unable to think of something to do. The problem we've got in the modern world, in the Western world in particular, is people have become very uh, I don't want to use the word lazy because that's not quite the right word, but let's say very used to having this parachute of I'm unemployed, I'm entitled to a government handout, thank you very much. That does reduce the effort that people are willing to make. But I think so it might not be as easy as it would have been in the past, but I do think that without the government involvement, without the Federal Reserve's involvement, the world would still survive and we'd recover very quickly.
I agree with both of you, but I don't quite. I agree with Clive partly about people saying I want to be bailed out. I want the dole or everything, but I think the worst people are the bankers because uh, they were bailed out in '08. They got their bonuses and they weren't like put in jail or anything like they said in The Big Short at the end. And I think that's a big problem. Like Rafi was saying, if the Fed comes to bail out, they're going to bail out the usual suspects, the Wall Street guys, the hedge funds, the private equity. Like Rafi said, it's probably be good to get hyperinflation because then I think these people would lose out a lot. But one thing I was thinking, looking at that chart and reading these diaries, is that it got really bad in early 1930 after the 29 crash. And the way he describes things is like, we never thought this would ever happen. And it was like he talks about how great fortunes were lost. And, and, uh, and I can understand, not that I like it, but you can understand why they brought in the welfare state after that. And they've kind of allowed now the central bank to interfere a lot more because they don't want that happening again. But the only problem I have with that is that we've used up so much of this faith and confidence in this welfare, warfare, fiat currency system that I'm not sure they're going to be able to keep going. But anyway, there's another super chat here from Bob Hunter. He says, stoicism plus the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, problems, or suffering without becoming annoyed or anxious. Thank you, Mario, Clive, and Rafi. Stoicism, you guys have a view on stoicism? I think it's a good philosophy, personally.
I mean, like, was the Greek version of it is to not be affected by the winds of emotion? Is that the point?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, well, look, you can't exactly deny your emotions. You have to experience them. But you got to be on top of them, and you have to have basically a grounding philosophy that helps you make a positive sense of the world so that you can keep going and not think that you are headed into just an utter crazy disaster, which I don't think we are. I'm not, people think that I'm negative because I say negative things in their view, but my view of what I'm saying that's negative is actually pretty positive. I'm looking forward to this. Because I see all the disgusting that's happening now, and I know this is the way out. It's not a pretty way out. It's not going to be like, a rainbow unicorn way out, but it's a way out. And so let's get out of here.
Clive, are you a stoic or?
I guess I'm a bit of a stoic, and that lady who was in the pub, she was a real stoic. She just sat there and said, "You know what? Last night was bad, but life goes on. We'll be opening the pub tonight." I saw this. I saw that guy who made that comment. He said, "All wars are bankers' wars" as well, didn't he? So, what do you think, Mario, about bankers' wars? The bankers finance the wars, don't they? They lend the money to the governments who are going to go to war.
Then they lent to both sides, just they hedged themselves. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, I don't want to see war. And the thing is, during the Great Depression, the war only came like 10 years later. So I guess if there is war, I guess there will be a lot more inflation, not great. It won't be a deflation. I would, I would bet. And I wanted to show you guys as well, because I've covered this before a while ago. I think 2 or 3 years ago, these leveraged loans. And at the time they were approaching 1 trillion. And I think now they're up to like 1.3 trillion in leveraged loans. So these are like even worse than high yield bonds. They're for companies that can't even issue like junk bonds. They borrow from the banks, and they're called leverage loans. And apparently it says that in the US they're suffering the biggest outflow in 4 years. And I've seen some people posting on Twitter about credit shrinking as well. So any view on this, guys? Leverage loans?
The problem with high risk or high yield debt, and high yield means high risk usually, is that there's a real risk that the borrowers won't repay. So when you go into one of these high yield funds or one of these leveraged loan funds, you're giving your money to people who say, we're so smart, we can lend it to people who are not going to default. Well, that's not really going to be true. There will be a default rate, and you've just got to hope that the people who are lending the money out are smart enough to lend it to the people who won't default. Of course, they'll try and convince you that is the case, but I personally don't believe it. And when they add leverage to the equation, in other words, they borrow more money so they can lever up to accelerate your returns, that of course can go both ways. And if they're very successful, you might make a very high percentage return, but in some cases you'll lose all your money. Now what's going on here? People are withdrawing the money from these funds. Why are they withdrawing the money? They see a recession potentially on the horizon. If there was a recession, the level of bankruptcies go up. And that means that those who are invested in these funds are not necessarily going to get back 100% of their principal, let alone all the interest.
Rafi, have you looked into these, or?
I haven't. Is it similar to the LDI scheme in the UK that blew up in 2022? Is it the same principle?
Kind of, but it's not to do with pensions. They're just they just finance very, smaller companies that don't have very good credit. And I guess now, they securitize everything. So we've got a lot of ETFs and mutual funds involved. And I think it's a market that's worth 1.3 trillion. But at the same time, in this article, they say that if there is a recession, they will cut rates and it will make things better for the higher yielding credit. But I thought this was interesting. But I just wanted to move on here about gold, central bank buying. And it says here, central bank gold buying through first half sets record. So even though China supposedly hasn't bought for a while, but I think they are doing it through the back door, it looks like gold buying in the first half is at a record. I think 2022 was a record for the whole that was the biggest year since 1950. Last year it was almost matched 2023, and it looks like this year it's continuing. Clive, any thoughts on that?
Well, the central banks of the large countries like China, Russia, and India, as examples, have got a long way to go before they have anything like the reserves of gold that America claims it's got. So I think America claims it's got 225, and I'm speaking from approximation here from memory, 225, is it tons? I suppose it's tons of gold. And China has got about 76 tons of gold. So China's at about fourth or fifth place behind Germany, for example. So there's a long way for these central banks to go if they want to have anything meaningful in terms of gold reserves relative to the size of their populations. I think Chinese and central bank buying from the major central banks will continue for a very, very long time, because they are realizing that there's no longer a situation where they can be 100% sure that their reserves in US Treasury bonds and bills are really going to be worth what they're worth today when it comes to redemption. So they're looking for alternatives. And I think gold will play an even bigger part of their reserves in the future. I think it's going to be a gradual thing, but it's not going to go away. And that will support the gold price for a long time.
Yeah, I think, yeah, the US has 261 million ounces. So yeah, and China maybe 75, 76 million. And that article as well said that someone from ANZ or ANZ Bank, it's a Australian bank, said that they expect the central banks to keep buying for the next 6 years, which I thought was interesting. Rafi, I know a lot of times you're not really concerned about central bank buying, but
It's not that I'm not concerned about it. I mean, it is going to positively affect the price of gold, but what I think it's not going to do is that it's not going to save any of these currencies. Because just because a central bank, an issuer of currency A, has gold reserves, what does that matter if it's not convertible?
Hmm.
If a central bank wants to stabilize its currency, it can't just buy gold, because all you have to do is look at Turkey,
Yeah,
and and they're gold buying. Sometimes they're the biggest gold buyer in a given quarter, not all the time, but like they've been pretty big buyers recently. Doesn't do anything with their currency.
that's right.
The only way that a stash of gold will stabilize your currency is if you say, okay, well, now we're going to stop printing, and if you want, you can take your currency and come to us, and we'll give you this amount of gold at fixed rate, and we're closing our doors on everything else. No central bank is going to do that, because that would end their entire business. So then the question really becomes like, then why are they even buying gold if they don't intend it to be convertible? And I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm right when I say this. I could be wrong, but I think that they think that the fact that they have gold will stabilize their currencies. But if they think that, they're wrong.
And
I
I agree. I, I agree with you, Rafi. I don't think it's going to stabilize their currencies, but I do think it will. A slightly different view here, that if the currency gets into a major problem and there's a collapse in global currencies, then they're going to want to back their currency with something to restore confidence and to be able to do trade again. So one of the reasons why countries are buying gold is if there is a complete loss of confidence in global currencies, and I refer here to any Western currency, whether it be the yen, the pound, the euro, or the dollar, it will have a snowball effect. All other currencies are going to ricochet in the same kind of way. People are going to say, hey, it happened to Japan, perhaps we're next. Yeah. And I think that loss of confidence will require some drastic action by central banks. And it's not going to be a question of just putting up the interest rates to say we'll pay you 15% so you believe in our currency. I think it's going to be more than that. And I think that there's a real possibility we might go back into a phase where the currencies of the world are backed by gold once again. Whether you believe that it will last forever and you'll always be able to take your money down to the bank and get the gold in exchange, that's another matter. But I think it's going to happen at some point, because I think the monetary systems we're in are past the point of no return.
Yeah, and hopefully if they do go back to backing their currencies with gold, it will be at a fixed rate, because that's how it should be. Indy, thank you for your super chat. Okay, this is a question for all three of us. Honest answer, please. Do you think the bubble will burst before year end? Start with Rafi.
I hope so. Depends how you define in the bubble bursting. I don't know exactly what that means. Does that mean Mad Max and we're all like, cannibals in the streets? No, I don't think that's gonna happen, but um I really hope so, because we're on the brink of war, and the only thing that can stop war is bankruptcy. Once you have no more money, you can't buy any more bombs. I mean, people nowadays see it the opposite way. Like, in order to continue the money flowing, you need war. Well, that doesn't really continue. That doesn't really make money flow. It just takes money from other things and focuses them on buying explosives. So, like, you see all the money being transferred for war, but you don't see all the other things that it's being sucked away from. if the dollar does collapse, then America can't fund the wars anymore. They're funding my country, they're funding Israel, unfortunately, and I'm not a fan of that. And they're funding Iran because Iran uses dollars, and they're funding Hezbollah, and they're funding all sides. So just stop that and end this bubble by the end of the year, because I'd rather not go through a war. I don't really know how to handle it that well.
I tend to think that we could be in the beginning of the bubble bursting, and that the Japanese yen carry trade is a symptom of that, and kind of a cause. And I just want to share this before I let Clive answer. Someone posted this on Twitter. The Great Martyrs. He says the BOJ reassuring the market that the unwinding of the Japanese yen carry trade is transient. So I thought that was quite funny. It's a guy with playing with the electric cables. Clive?
Well, I thought the bubble had burst last Monday. We woke up Monday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning to find the Japanese stock market down 13% on the futures. And it looked like NASDAQ and S&P 500 were going to follow through. They were all down several percent already on the futures exchanges. And I thought that, okay, this is it. Japan's now moved into a bear market. It was down more than 20%. And it's only a question of time before the American and European stock markets follow suit. It didn't happen, and I was very surprised. So my question is, what I'm wondering was that the warning, or is the market so robust it can handle these kind of shocks? The shock in this case was the increase in the Japanese interest rate from 0.1% to 0.25%, which made the carry trade unattractive, therefore forcing people to sell their treasuries, pay off their Japanese loan yens, causing the Japanese yen to rise, which caused, of course, the potential profits of companies which are exporters in Japan to fall, causing the Japanese stocks to fall. But of course, when stock market falls, they're all so intertwined, you expect the other stock markets around the world to do exactly what any major stock market does. So the thought was that when Japan falls, America will follow suit, but that didn't really happen. And I haven't got the figures as of today, but I think the US stock markets are down a few percent from their highs. It's not really a big deal so far. Do I think the bubble's going to happen soon? Is it going to burst soon? Yes, I think so. And I think before the year end, I think we're going to have a bear market of some sort. It doesn't mean to say I'm recommending anybody sell stocks. I'm not going to sell stocks. I will sit through it, but I believe the stocks I've got are the sort of stocks which will still be here when we get out of the other side.
Yeah. I don't know. It's the best thing that could happen is what Rafi said, but I don't know what would trigger it. We've got a couple of minutes. Rafi, someone asked if you've been to Walmart lately, but I don't think there are Walmarts in Israel, are there?
There are no Walmarts here. No.
I think you went last year to the States, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So I went to Costco there, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see here if there's some questions. If you've got any questions, guys, we've got just 1 minute to go here. Oh yeah, Bob Hunter, good night, brothers and sisters. We were warned about military industrial complex. Are we going to repeat our mistakes? I guess that's up to Powell. I think is he mentioning I think it was Eisenhower who warned in his farewell address, I think in 1960-61, about the military industrial complex.
Yeah, well, it was just set up to fund World War II. That's how the military industrial complex started. They got the whole country creating munitions for World War II to win that war. And then they're like, okay, now we exist. So we have to keep producing stuff. Because we don't want to not have it for the next war. So that's how it started, and we're still in that situation.
And maybe it was also because they were concerned that if they stopped as well, it wouldn't help the economy. And it's interesting that in this book, Rafi, I don't know if you remember, I think in 1932-31, there's like 50,000 veterans of World War I. They marched into
Yeah,
Washington.
they wanted their money, right?
Yeah, the bonus brigade, I think they're called, and they were driven out by the following guys: General MacArthur, General Patton, and General Eisenhower. So they killed three ex-servicemen and pushed them out of Washington, D.C., and burnt their shanty town that they had built there, because the government had promised them $1,000 pension by 1945.
Mhm.
And by 1932, they were desperate and they wanted something. So that's how they treated them. They got Eisenhower, Patton, and who else? MacArthur to drive them out. Clive, any final words?
I'd never heard of that one, Mario.
Yeah.
Can I just show you? I had a bit of good luck at the pawn shop the other day. A widow had brought in some collection by her late husband. It was a kind of spur of the moment thing, apparently, and she'd seen the shop we buy at the window. We buy gold and silver. But one of the pieces I managed to collect was this lovely PAMP bar. It's a 5-ounce bar. I've got a glove on so I don't
Wow,
get my fingerprints
nice.
all over it. It's called Lady Fortuna, and you can get these bars in gold and silver. But there's a really beautiful bar. It comes in a case with a certificate, and it's in perfect condition. And I managed to buy at above the silver price. I paid more than the silver price, but I think I'll make that back in the coming weeks. I managed to buy quite a large collection of beautiful coins from Australia, like the pandas, the kookaburras, and from the UK, the Lion of England coins, which are £5 coins, and they're legal tender, therefore not subject to capital gains tax in the UK, Mario. I'm sure you'll know that. So yeah, no, I was quite. I also got some Armenian coins called Noah's Ark.
Yeah,
So it's quite a lucky day.
I think I have a 1 ounce Noah's Ark from Armenia. Rafi, have you been doing any stacking?
Actually, a friend came by and he was at this conference to build the third temple, and it attracted these Germans who, I guess, they have this Holocaust guilt or something, and so they want to fund it. So they gave him this like 20 mark gold piece from Kaiser Wilhelm II. He's like, Rafi, I don't really want this. Do you want to buy it from me? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I have like a now I have a Kaiser Wilhelm II 1894 20 mark gold piece. I think it's a 1/4 ounce.
Oh, that's nice. I think I have a Kaiser. I have a Kaiser, yeah, 20 mark as well, and I have Tsar Nicholas five. I think it's 5 or 10 ruble gold piece. They're almost the same size.
Same family too.
Yeah, same family, and I think they're 90% gold purity
Yeah,
because
they're 90%. Yeah.
yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for coming on the live stream tonight, and also the viewers for your all your questions and your participation. And yeah, Rafi, I wish you a good coming week, and hopefully there will be peace over there and not war, and Clive as well.
Thank you very much, and good night to you and all your viewers. Good night, Rafi. Good night, Mario.
Good night,
Good
guys.
night.
End the stream. Cool. All right. Okay.
If we can get through Tuesday, then I think the